Welcome to another episode of F It, I've Got a Brain Injury. My name's Ken, and I'm here with Jesse.
The idea of this podcast was to have a podcast for people with brain injuries, for people with family members who have brain injuries, for people who want to learn more about brain injuries. And I wanted to let it be known that me and Ken, the hosts, have brain injuries. So I apologize for my voice. And I also apologize for Ken's face. Thank God you can't see it. He has a face for radio.
I have a face that would make a freight train take a dirt road.
So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and enjoy.
Hello, welcome to another edition of F It, I Have a Brain Injury. And today I'm here with Kim Verner, who will be talking a little bit about trusts.
Ken, thanks for inviting me today. I know we've known each other for a long time, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
And I hope to learn a lot from you today.
Me too.
Thanks.
Now, the first thing I want to get on is, why did I need the trust back in the day to get onto Medicaid, wasn't it?
It was. So we met through advocacy work that I've done as a disability attorney.
Okay.
So I'm an elder law and disability attorney, and we met because you had parents who were, okay, forgive me for saying this, but aging, because they are.
Yep.
And you were a person with a disability, and you came to me because you had specific concerns because you needed to get on Medicaid.
Right.
And so because of that, we went into a certain type of planning. So we were talking about wills, trusts, how to plan for you, and how to plan for your parents. But before we get into talking about sort of the law stuff, I just want to tell people how I sort of fell into becoming a disability attorney.
Okay.
So I was a math and music major back in college, eventually finishing a degree in music. And I went off and played at a music festival for a summer.
Really?
And, well, it's not that exciting. I played the viola. It was a classical music festival. We didn't get to wear like all the crazy clothing and stuff. And I came back to college broke, needed a job, as you do when you're broken in college. And my sister was working in a group home with people with disabilities, and I went to visit her, and they liked her a lot, and they knew I needed a job, and they hired me because they usually find that if they like someone in a family, they're going to like everyone else in the family. So I sort of fell into a part-time job working with individuals or kids with disabilities, working in a group home. And my accidental job turned into 5 years with the Capital District. It's now Center for Disability Services. It had a different name back then. From there, I wound up going off to law school because I realized there was a better way to advocate for some of the people that I had been working with. So it was sort of a fluke that I got my first job in the field, but I found that there's not much more that brings more sort of joy and excitement and sort of brain challenge than helping individuals with disabilities and seniors when you know that you're helping make their lives better. So I'm using sort of my math brain with some of this Medicaid stuff and some of the financial stuff. I'm using my creative brain and come up with solutions for families, and then I get to also be like part-time social worker. So it was kind of a roundabout way of combining all these different things I've studied in college, because I studied social work and biology along the way too. I was like one of those in college for 6 years and eventually got around to graduating kind of things. So all of this wrapped up into a field where I get to do really cool things to help families and help individuals live the most sort of independent lives and manage all of those government benefits in a way that they can, have some money in their pocket in a legal way, what we're going to talk about, but still, keep Medicaid, keep Social Security, keep those important things.
And how do you keep it all straight? Things are changing all the time with Medicaid.
It's because I only practice in a really narrow area. So I do estate planning, I do this Medicaid, I do the disability planning, And that's all my brain can hold. So if you need someone or have questions about family law or get a ticket other than my family, I can't do that because my brain can't hold that. It can only hold the information in the area that we're in. So I spend my time learning and studying just what we're going to talk about today.
So you've never been an ambulance chaser?
I've never been an ambulance chaser. And I've reached the point in my career that I avoid court to the extent possible because they make you wear suits and they want you to remember the rules of evidence. And so I've got other people who can do that part for me. So do you want to talk about a little bit about estate planning and how that impacts people with disabilities?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So the first thing that might be helpful is talking about what's the difference between a will and a trust. So a will is a document that almost every adult should have. And it says, I've got some stuff, and there's people I want to get it. And so it's this place just to say where you want your stuff to go, who you want to get it, and who you want to be in charge of it. But the thing a lot of people don't know is a will is really only helpful for assets that have only one person's name on it. So if I had a bank account and my name was on it and Ken's name was on it, because there's joint owners, it just goes to the other joint owner. So if you've got an asset like life insurance where you name a beneficiary, or if for people who are married and have joint accounts, they don't really have to worry about wills so much or worry about so much with estate planning when the first person dies, because most things are held jointly. So it's an important tool for most adults, but it has sort of a certain purpose. When we're talking about protecting assets for someone with a disability, though, this will doesn't by itself help protect anything. It would just say, hypothetically, if I wanted to give things to Ken, and my will said everything to Ken, it's going to go into his name directly, and that's going to muck up your benefits.
Right.
So you're going to, presuming I have money to give you, it would cause you to lose Medicaid. It would cause you to lose possibly Social Security or other benefits. And so we have to put this into a trust instead. And there are lots and lots of different kinds of trusts out there. But the ones that we're going to focus on today are something called a special needs trust. So first, a trust sounds like, for a lot of people, like a scary kind of thing. Like it sounds like it's fancy and it sounds like it's something for rich people. But a trust is really just an agreement between somebody setting something up, called a grantor or a settlor, somebody who's the trustee who has a job who has to do things, and the best job, which is a beneficiary. So what questions do you have about trust before I sort of go on?
Well, I had a question. So when I was in the hospital, after I got out, we got a bill. Okay. For $2.3 million.
That's a big bill.
That's a very, very big bill. So because of that, I was told that whatever money I possibly could make or any kind of income I get would just be taken away and go towards that hospital bill. So does the trust kind of protect me against that, or?
So there's, again, when we're talking about different kinds of trusts do different things. So if you had money before you went into the hospital, there's ways to use a type of special needs trust to sort of legally, I don't want to use the word hide because hide sounds like it's something that's not legal, but you can take your money and put it in a box called the special needs trust, and it would be there for your benefit, but it wouldn't affect your ability to get Medicaid. And if you were on Medicaid, the hospital can't bill $2.3 million for your medical services. So there's different times that we'd create sort of a trust. One is when someone first gets injured or early on, we can create a trust to help divert or protect the assets that are in their name. So Ken, when you had gotten injured, you'd previously had a job, you'd had some assets, you had a boat. There was things that we needed to protect so you could still sort of have some of this stuff, but also keep Medicaid. So we sometimes create a trust right after someone becomes disabled or gets a brain injury to protect what they already have. Because brain injuries often happen later in life, after someone's lived part of a life. There's other times when I do trusts, I'm doing them because people's parents want to protect assets or want to be able to pass something on to someone. So knowing that you are a person with a disability, your mother or father or loved one might not want you to inherit money directly, because that's going to mess up your Medicaid, and it is going to have to go to that $2.3 million bill. So you wouldn't be the one to set up a trust. Your parents or your loved ones would set one up. And a trust would just say, at my death, I want whatever it's going to be in this thing called a supplemental needs trust or a special needs trust for your benefit. And all the money in there is only for your use. While you're alive, the trustees or the person in charge of managing the money has to use the money to pay bills and things that you need. Can't be there for anybody else. The one sort of downside to these special needs trusts that we do for folks with disabilities is the trustee can't give you any cash. So no money's going to go from the trustee to your own pocket, but they can pay bills on your behalf. They can pay rent, and they can pay for a vehicle, and they can pay for a vacation. They can pay for these other things, which means when you've got benefits coming in like Social Security, you can use your Social Security to pay for your stuff, to the stuff that you want, and then maybe the special needs trust might be able to pay for other stuff for you.
So you're saying that, like, I wouldn't be able to pay rent myself? It'll have to be, like, through my brother or family member?
Well, so if rent was one of the things you were concerned with, you could arrange it that the trust pays your rent on your behalf, for you, with the trust money, if there's trust money out there for you. And then that money that you would have used to pay your rent, you now have this to use for something else you might want or need, like going to social things, like gas for a car, like food, like clothing, or, if you've got hobbies, you can spend that on hobbies.
Oh, Ken, you were telling me that in your trust, it won't pay for groceries.
Wasn't that the truth at one time, that it wouldn't cover groceries?
Well, it is true, and that's going to be changing in the fall.
Okay.
So up until now, Social Security Administration, they've got really strict rules about what you can use the trust for and what you can't. And so the first piece of advice I give people is never try to do this on your own. You have to work with professionals who know what all these rules and regulations are. And right now, if you've got one of these trusts, they shouldn't be used for food. But starting in the fall, they've changed the regulations. And if it's used for food, it won't be a problem.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. It scared me a lot when I first heard about the trust is that you have to, like, document every single thing you want or need. So I thought, like, if I go to the grocery store, I have to literally write some document or something saying that I got this, or if I wanted, say, a new couch or anything, it has to be documented.
It does, but it's not quite as scary as you think. So if you're using your money, so if you're getting Social Security, and between you and your trustee, you said, okay, this is your budget for what money you get to spend, you don't have to keep receipts for what you spend. But the trustee has to keep receipts for every penny the trustee spends. So you don't have to keep the receipts. It's the trustee who's spending the trust money. So there's almost like there's two pockets of money when you have one of these trusts. Mm-hmm. So there's the money from your Social Security you get to keep and spend on what you want. You don't have to document that. You don't have to tell Medicaid what you did with it. You don't have to tell Social Security what you did with it. You could give it to the neighbor's dog. You can go on vacation. You can do whatever I wouldn't recommend the dog thing, but you can do whatever you want with that, and you don't have to keep the receipts for that. But when the trustee is spending money in the trust. The trustee has this title. It's called a fiduciary power or fiduciary duty. And this is something that says, I know I'm acting on behalf of somebody else, and I have to be more careful with this money than I would be with my own money. So when someone is acting as a fiduciary, which is they're a trustee of a trust or an agent under a power of attorney, or even like an executor of an estate, they have to document every single penny because it's not their money that they're managing. They're managing money for somebody else. And so it's the trustee who has to be super cautious, keep all the receipts, and then once a year, when you have to do your Medicaid recertification, they have to come up with, here's the bank accounts that showed everything that went in and everything that went out, and here's the receipts to back it up. Because Medicaid or local departments of social services want to make sure that the trustee of your trust did not spend the money on Ken.
Right.
Or on the dog. Or on anybody else. So that would be a problem if your trustee gave your money to somebody else. So it's the trustee who has to be really careful. But these days there's a lot of ways of doing it to make it easier for trustees. So what
Is it more like an audit that they have to do, kind of?
It's
It's
it's like an audit. Yeah, they just think of every number on the check register has to have a receipt.
Right.
Do you have other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any circumstances under which the person with the disability can manage their own trust or pay for the things they need out of their own trust, even unofficially, or is that legal no?
Officially, no. Because in the eyes of these government benefits, in the eyes of Medicaid and Social Security, if Ken, for example, could manage his own trust,
he wouldn't need services.
Well, it's not only that he wouldn't need services, but he has access to money that's sort of, in the eyes of the government benefits, is hidden away from him.
Yep.
It's for his benefit, but it's not his money. So if he can manage it, they're going to say it's his money, and it's no longer protected. So, when we're talking about someone with a disability, whether it's a brain injury, mental health issues, the abilities of individuals range all over the place, from not having any ability to manage money to having people who have, let's say, MS. They're in a wheelchair, but, cognitively, they can manage money just fine, but they're not allowed to be in charge of their trust money either. So it's not because someone has a brain injury. It's because these rules are, we have to put up like a wall between the person with the disability and the trust funds. So Medicaid doesn't think you've got control over it, because if they think you can control it, then they're going to want it and you lose your Medicaid. So it's more the government benefit reason why. It's not because someone has a brain injury. It's because of the rules for these government benefits.
So it's pretty important to know who your trustee is and pick a responsible person, I guess.
I think that's the most important decision that someone can make, is who's going to be your trustee. And the answer is, for some people, is pretty obvious. There are people who have great parents and family members around who are happy to help. And so sometimes it's family, but there are a lot of people who don't have close family, or sometimes they don't have trustworthy family. So when I'm meeting with people, we're exploring all of the options, and there's really 3 different ways you can go. One is family and friends, if you have people you like and trust. And the trusting them is even more important than liking them, The second is, depending on how much money you have, sometimes people use a bank. So when we've got folks with brain injuries, sometimes they have a pretty big settlement. So if someone has a settlement from an injury of $1 million or more, I'm going to say, even if you have parents or family you like and trust, a bank is a really good option, because they know how to manage this, they know how to invest it, they know how to handle all those little details. And so for some families, they use a bank or a financial institution. The third option is using a not-for-profit who do these things called pooled trusts. So one really good example is NYSARC, NYSARC. They have these pool trusts, but they can also act as a trustee for someone. So we really, when I'm meeting with folks, we really want to have a conversation as what are the options and what's the best option for each person, because it's really very specific to that person, to how much there is in terms of money and who's in their life.
I'm glad you brought up NASARC because one of my questions was going to be, how people who don't have the financial ability or enough money to find someone to create a trust for them. Mm-hmm. So is NYSAR like one of those?
NYSARC's a great option for a situation like that. When you work with an attorney, I don't want to say like a big range because it depends on who you're working with and it depends on what you need and how many different documents we're doing, how complex it is. So there could be a range of sometimes $2,000 to $8,000, depending on how many different things need to be done when you're working with a private attorney. But if someone doesn't have the money to hire a private attorney, I think a group like NYSARC is a really good way to go. They can help walk you through some of what might need to happen to get the trust up and going. Or often I can help people get set up with NYSARC, so I can help with some of the initial paperwork, and then I back off and NYSARC takes it from there. So I think a group like NYSARC has a really important role, especially when we have individuals who don't have a lot of money to start with.
So they pay for like the hospital, or should I say cable bills and things like that, so you don't have to worry about that. Is that how that works?
Right. So when you're working with a group like a pooled trust company, then they can pay. Yeah, the way it works is you fax or email or mail them bills, and then they write the check directly to the company.
Okay.
And for I'm using NYSARC as an example. So what that is that's just one of the pool trust companies available in New York State, and it's based on New York. It was formerly New York State ARC, and they keep changing what the ARC part stands for. So that just happens to be the statewide umbrella for all of the ARCs in New York, and they happen to be one of the larger New York State pool trusts. But every state in the country has different companies or different not-for-profits who will have these pool trusts that are available, because the technique of using them to protect assets is something that you can do in every state. Even though we're in New York right now, and we're talking about some things that are New York based, every state you have the ability to get Medicaid if you have a disability, get SSI or Social Security if you have a disability, and there's ways of protecting assets. So again, NYSARC is just one of the larger ones in New York.
Now, what other kinds of trusts are there for people that do have a lot of money? Does it go into the same?
Oh, I can.
No.
Well, no, that's not a bad question, because often I'm planning not only for the individuals, but I'm planning for their parents. And so if the parents know, they worked hard, they've got savings and retirement accounts, or they want to pass a house on to someone, then we would do a different type of, it's still a type of special needs trust, but then I'm not working directly with the folks with disabilities. That in that case, I'm planning with their families. So their estate planning says, at my death, I want my house and this retirement account and these funds to go into this special needs trust for the benefit of Ken. And then at that point, that family is making a decision who should be the trustee.
Right.
So it could be another family member, it could be a not-for-profit, or it could be a financial institution like a bank, a place like that, who has a trust department.
Could a trustee ever fight you against you wanting to get something, and the trustee be like, "Nah, you don't need that. We're not gonna give you money for that," or can they kind of cut you off at some kind of?
It's a really good question because I've been hired regarding these trusts 3 different ways. I've been hired to draft the trust. I've been hired sometimes to represent the trustee when they're in a disagreement with the beneficiary as to how to spend the money. And I've been hired by the beneficiaries to fight with the trustee over how to spend the money. So that's a really good question because sometimes there's a real disagreement between the trustee who thinks their job is to make sure the money stretches out over someone's lifetime. And so they tend to act really conservative and they try to, I don't want to say they don't try to spend the money, but they try to stretch it out. Whereas sometimes the beneficiaries are like, but I just want this now. And sometimes it's a reasonable request and the trustee is being unreasonable. Or sometimes it's the person with a disability who doesn't understand the trustee's trying to look out for them in the long term.
You're talking about me on that one.
Actually, no,
Right.
not at all.
Right.
Like that's not. But it's something that's really kind of common. And I think when you're working with someone who has a brain injury, where there can be impulse issues,
Right.
or when I'm working with individuals with mental health issues, who are looking in the moment or aren't always rational with their thought, like they don't always understand that the trustee's not going to let them spend all of the money in 1 year
Right.
because that's not going to help them. In future years, if all of your money is gone now. So it's better to use the trust a little bit at a time, and sort of the younger that you are, the longer the trustee's going to try to stretch this out.
Now, what is the trust you were talking about with me now that I own the house? Is there something else that I might want to put it into?
So,
Well, I actually have a question about that. Like,
okay.
so you got the house, but did you pay for it in your own name? Because you were saying that the trustee is the one who is writing the checks, right?
So this sort of combines a couple of different things. If Ken's parents wanted to give him a house, they would put it into something called a special needs trust. Or if someone already has a special needs trust and there's cash in it, they can use that cash to buy a house. But sometimes when people are on Medicaid and they've got some income, depending on how old they are, there might be other types of trusts we might use with the house. So before I would say to Ken, we're going to take the house and we're absolutely putting it into a special needs trust, we might explore one other option, which would be something else called a Medicaid trust or a Medicaid asset protection trust. And this is the type of trust that I do with seniors who are looking to protect assets. So there's different reasons for doing it. It all depends on who gets to inherit whatever's left in it. And so the answer to a situation like Ken's, as I just bought a house, where do I put it? Really is a matter of Ken would sit down with an attorney,
You.
in case me, and we would look at different things. We would look at his age. We would look at his benefits that he's getting right now. Is he on SSI or Social Security disability? Is he on Medicaid? What kind of Medicaid is he on? What are the possible, transfer issues that might be out there if he put it into one trust versus another? And this is where the rules would really change state to state too. So a plan I might put together for Ken in New York might be different than a plan and a special needs attorney might put together in Massachusetts or Ohio or Arizona, because their Medicaid rules are different. And so there's different things that would affect it. So what we would look at is it a community Medicaid program such as the TBI waiver, or someone already in a nursing home? That would affect what kind of trust we're going to use. How old someone is, that affects what kind of trust we're going to use. Because there's things that can happen before 65 that you're not allowed to do after 65. So we would look at all these different factors, and attorneys always try to craft a plan that fits a specific person under the specific rules of their state at that time.
So Ken's must have been very difficult.
I'm always difficult.
That's okay. An attorney's favorite answer to most questions is, it depends.
Yep.
You'll almost never get an attorney to say a yes or no to an answer because it all depends on the circumstances. So it depends on a state, it depends on benefits, it depends on the value of things, it depends on someone's age, their abilities, and so it's really, it's really all these different things happening.
What about a credit card? Am I allowed to have one?
So there's two things going with credit cards right now. So one is, just because someone has a disability doesn't mean they can't, obviously it doesn't mean they can't have a credit card.
Right.
So if we're talking about credit cards and trusts, there's two things happening. One is, you could have a credit card that allows you to pay for, especially starting in the fall, pay for little things that you might need, pay for some food, pay for incidentals, and have it for an emergency. And you could submit that credit card bill to the trustee of your supplemental needs trust or your pooled trust. And they, as long as it fits the right categories, they will pay the bill for you. Or if they say $75 of this bill is something we're allowed to pay, so we'll pay that, but you have to pay the other $25 because it's something the trust isn't allowed to pay. So the trustee would look at it and see what's on there. Now, I know if you're working with a bank, banks get really, they don't like to pay for things that they didn't already approve. So these credit cards don't always work well with a bank as a trustee. But there's something else out there that I'm starting to talk to families about. Have either of you heard of something called a TrueLink card?
Not at all.
No.
Never heard of it.
Okay. Well, this is something that more trustees are using, and it's all across the country. So a TrueLink is a type of Visa card where the trustee can put money on it, but then puts limits on what it can be used for.
Like a prepaid?
It's like a prepaid credit card, but it's limited to certain categories. So if someone is on SSI right now and they use it for food, that's going to mess up their SSI. Or if it's used for, it wouldn't be used for rent, but if it was used for rent, or if it was used for something dangerous, or if they wanted to use this prepaid card to get cash out of an ATM, it wouldn't be allowed to do that because the trustee knows it's going to violate trust rules. And so it's a card that a trustee or family members can put really strict rules on and say, okay, this is your TrueLink card, and you can use it for $200 this month, and here's the different things. You can use it for entertainment, for clothing, and so they can put categories on it. So this TrueLink card is something that we're talking to families about because it's a tool that helps with allowing some freedom in spending if people use the money or use the card for the right thing.
What about going on vacation or going with miles?
Question.
Credit card with miles on it so I can use that to go on vacation.
Okay, for something like that, as long as you're using it for things your trustee is going to say okay to,
Right.
then you can use that credit card.
Thank God I've been doing it right. Because I do like to go on vacation probably 3 times a year going back to Chicago. And I just want to make sure I can do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So along with making sure that you choose an attorney who actually focuses on that and you choose the right trustee, the other biggest piece of advice is if you've ever got questions about, am I going to do something to mess up my benefits, always ask a professional beforehand. We'd always rather answer a question and help somebody before a mistake happens
Before it happens.
than have to fix the mistake. And it's going to be a lot cheaper to ask the question beforehand than to fix something afterwards.
Well, that's why I was asking you if it was okay for me to buy this place.
Right, exactly.
Right? Well, I would just like to say thank you, Kim, for coming on today for us and telling us so much about these trusts. I had a lot of questions about them today.
It was a pleasure being here. It was really a blast. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to F It, I Have a Brain Injury. I'm Jesse, and this is Ken.
And I hope you all get something out of this podcast.
We would love to hear your stories too. See you next time.
See you next time.